Opinions expressed in this film do not necessarily reflect those of the Ewing Cancer Foundation of Canada.
He was admitted to hospital shortly after that for his chemo treatments, and I think it was the second chemo treatment that we were visiting in the hospital with Justin, and Justin said, "I think I can do a skateboard trick," and he hopped on the IV pole, and he's going down the hallway, and I'm saying, "Go, Justin, go." And he's saying 1, 2, 3. And the next day when I'm telling his pop is not at all impressed with Aunt Ruby, who should be a little bit more mature than that, and suggested that we were going to get kicked out of the hospital if we encouraged Justin in those pursuits.
More than 60,000 billion cells make up the human body. They are the units that form the tissues which make up our organs, like the liver, heart, and lungs. When the body needs it, our cells split into two and replace those cells that are defective or have come to the end of their lifespan. This makes it possible for our tissues to preserve their shape and their respective functions with the passage of time. Every cell is therefore programmed to multiply and die. This ordered but complex program is controlled by the center of the cell, the nucleus, which contains chromosomes containing many genes made up of DNA. Sometimes, some of these genes undergo a change. The nucleus then sends out abnormal orders and the cell goes wrong. It multiplies uncontrollably and takes on a life of its own. Each new cell produced contains the same defect. The cells proliferate chaotically and form a tumor. This process may be short, but is often long. 10 to 30 years may separate the birth of a first abnormal cell from the appearance of a tumor of about 1 cubic centimeter.
Discovered in the early 1930s by Dr. James Ewing, this sarcoma cancer is a high-grade tumor affecting bone or soft tissue.
It's the second most common tumor that starts in bone in young people. The first most common is osteosarcoma. Kids learn about osteosarcoma because of Terry Fox, and so this is the second most common primary bone tumor in kids.
It starts typically in bone or soft tissue, highly malignant diseases with a tendency to metastasize, spread to other organs, dreadful disfiguring disease, or can be.
Many of the children survive unless they recur or there's metastases. It's really the metastases that is the big killer of Ewing sarcoma.
It is the second most common bone tumor in humans, behind osteosarcoma. Osteosarcoma is the cancer that Terry Fox had, and I think people are familiar with that story. Ewing sarcoma is very different. It's an entirely different tumor. And what I mean by that is while it can sometimes look similar and occurs at the same general age of patients, at a fundamental biology, it behaves differently. It is actually responds to totally different types of treatment, and the basic genetics and biology of the tumor are very different than other types of bone tumors.
The tumor forms many blood vessels in order to survive. These will supply the tumor with oxygen and nutriments, allowing it to live and grow. This is what we call the phenomenon of angiogenesis. The tumor, however, only really becomes dangerous when the cancerous cells begin to invade through the vessels into the adjacent areas and spread to the surrounding organs. These cells can then invade other parts of the body, multiply and produce new tumors. Metastasis is the term used for this spreading process.
That's what we know about it on a clinical level. What we are doing now is going down to the more of a molecular level, and in fact Ewing's is one of those tumors that has had quite a bit known on it on a molecular level for a while. So what's known on the molecular level is that there's two chromosomes that are in fact broken and brought together. This has been known for 20 years. It brings these two genes together that would not normally be friends at all.
Full name is Thomas Fallman, Thomas. Last name is Fahlman. It's just a shit kicker. Like, it'll bust you down a peg, and you know. But if you can stay positive, if you can keep the belief and the hope that you're gonna be in that maybe 5 to 7% that can make it, you'll do it. You just gotta believe.
So at the beginning of grade 10, so last fall, he came home from school and was kind of on the limp a bit and kind of complaining that I was hurting. We talked about what he'd been doing in gym class. That kind of stood to reason for us that, okay, well that's likely what's going on.
When my leg hurt so much that I would wake up in the middle of the night and start crying, that's when I knew there's something definitely not normal with this.
Thomas's cancer is very serious. It's one of the most nasty kinds you can get. The chances that he might not be with us in 5 years' time are very high.
When I was in Toronto, I was their longest patient that they've ever had. Like a whole year. They haven't had a single person, I think, since that's been with the TRI, Toronto Rehab Institute, that's lasted or needed a whole year of treatment. And I was their kid. Like, I became the kid for all of the nurses, and they all became like my family, like my aunts and my uncles. And I trusted them with everything, and I was right to trust them. And leaving them felt like, you know, I was leaving my second family. That those were the people that helped me reclaim what I had lost, that helped me rebuild my life, really, and helped me get put on the right track. And those people are amazing. And every time we go back to Toronto for checkups, we make sure to stop by to see them. I always stop in to see my family.
We're just a little bit closer to a point of no return. Doing not what we're supposed to.
His name is Justin Tobin, and he is a solid Ewing Sarcoma diagnosis. We connected recently around a documentary that we're talking about doing for Yak. And then we just thought he'd be a great addition to the show because he's got a really cool, unique story. And he's like you guys, dealing with so many of the same things you guys are. So please, let's welcome Justin to the Big Cancer Hookup. Oh, we got it. We can dance it in. Good work, dude.
Hey.
Custom intros, I love that.
Yeah, I like that too. It's nice.
like
Nice
it.
touch. It's a nice
Now,
touch. Yeah.
I just need to check with the guys in the truck to make sure they got the wide angle lens on.
I can hear 'em
for
too,
the beard. Make sure
Oh,
we've got.
yes, yeah,
We
yeah.
got that. Yes.
Yeah,
we
it
got,
is the
we
biggest part of my body, so
we got the beard captured.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, you know, you don't always get it all, right? So
You're good.
It's Justin, as they say, it's hard coming into this world and it's hard going out. Well, that's what it was like for Justin. I was 17 when I got pregnant and I was 18 when I had him. So it was my last year of high school. I was pregnant for the whole time. I was 25 hours in labor. Yeah. And, but he was a healthy boy. He was born on a Friday at 7:15 p.m. on July the 5th of '85. And when he was born, I said he came out to party. And I was right on the money.
Thanks for coming and
Yeah.
being here. I know you have had a crazy week, and I know you're going back in on Monday for a little bit more surgery.
Yeah.
So we're really glad you made time to be here with us.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
So you had treatment, you came out of treatment, and then you had some scans and follow-ups, obviously, and then they found a couple of spots they want to go in and check them out, basically.
Yes. Yeah.
Take them out.
Yeah, they're gonna take out the 2 spots. I have one spot right here and one right here, and originally we thought it was gonna be like the bird cage, kind of what Jody had done.
Right.
And now it's actually much less invasive, and yeah, hopefully it goes all good.
That's right.
It's nice though because I get to take a break then, so
Yeah.
it's my downtime,
Forced.
my staycation. I like it.
There is currently no cause, which makes it difficult to research since it is not hereditary, and most of the genetic changes leading to disease occur after birth. Ewing sarcoma is often misdiagnosed as a sports injury, growing pains, or an inflammatory condition. Symptoms of this cancer include breaking a bone from a minor injury or for no apparent reason, swelling or a lump at the site of the tumor, pain near the site of the tumor, pain that is disproportionate to an injury and does not appear to get better with time, fever, fatigue, weight loss, weakness.
What happens is a number of patients will present with essentially several days or several weeks, or in some cases months, of non-specific complaints that aren't easily attributable to a cancer. And because most of the time the child, the young adult, is otherwise very healthy and maybe going about their daily business, it can sometimes take a while before a doctor triggers that, oh, this is more than your usual back pain, leg pain, ankle pain, arm pain, niggling discomfort. And so that can lead to a longer period of time where you actually don't pick up the right diagnosis.
Ewing sarcoma is kind of hard to diagnose because it doesn't have a lot of distinguishing features when, as a pathologist, you look down the microscope to make a diagnosis. So this is really critical for getting the patient on the right therapy up front, because otherwise there's a danger that the disease will spread and become incurable by the time that patient gets on the right therapy. So super important to come up with the right diagnosis, assign the patient to the right treatment at the right time, or as expediently as possible. It can make a huge difference to outcome.
People who come in with Ewing sarcoma don't look sick. They're healthy. They're like the kids, running around on the soccer field or playing hockey on the ice rink, and they say, my knee hurts, or my ankle hurts, or they're going to school, or they're just working. They look well, but they say something hurts. And so, understandably, their journey through the healthcare system when something hurts is the way it would be for all of us. You know, you go to a walk-in clinic, you go to your family doctor, you may go to emergency room, maybe you'll go back to your family doctor. The family doctor will eventually maybe refer you to a specialist or eventually maybe do an x-ray. So I can't say that I've ever met anybody who has not been through this, you know, windy path before they end up actually getting a diagnosis of Ewing sarcoma.
I'm 7 and I go to Margaret Stenhouse in Abbotsford and I'm in grade 2.
We'd been camping at the lake, and we thought maybe she'd fallen and bumped her back or something, because she was just talking about how much her back hurt. So that's the only explanation we could figure out. Was, oh, maybe she slipped while she was swimming, or she slipped while she was walking over a log and had just bumped her back or something. But she was screaming in pain, and it was terrible. She couldn't move her neck to bend over. And so we went to emergency and were seen there, and at that point she couldn't move to bend over. She was having trouble, a little bit of trouble walking, and a lot of pain in her back, like screaming in pain. And we saw the doctor in the ER and then the pediatrician, and she had x-rays done, and they were certain it was all caused by constipation.
After 6 months of the same diagnosis from their family doctor, Greta could hardly walk, and her parents rushed her to emergency at Vancouver's Sick Kids Hospital. While waiting 12 hours to see a pediatrician, an intern contacted neurology, who believed Greta's problem to be a virus and ordered a spinal tap.
And yeah, so they wanted to keep her overnight and do a spinal tap the next day to find out what kind of virus it was. But before they did the spinal tap, they wanted to do an MRI to make sure that it was okay to do the spinal tap. And when she went in for MRI, it ended up being a 3-hour MRI. So she went in for what was supposed to be just a routine scan before the puncture, and hours went by, and then they came out and they said that they saw a lesion on her spine, and that they thought it was cancer. And she went right from there to surgery, and she was in surgery for the rest of the evening into the night. And it was a Sunday night, and it was just about 10 days before Christmas that year. So some hope for the future for Greta is that she stays well. There's a high chance of relapse. So her cancer wasn't removed out of her back. She had proton therapy in Boston, which is a type of radiation. And it was done at the highest, like maximum lifetime dose that she could get in that area. So she got the most she could, but it was just kind of the bare minimum to help attack Ewing's. So it's kind of a fine balance there between keeping spinal function at all and killing the Ewings. She's got a brother who's just turned 10, and they're very close through treatment. So he spent a lot of time sitting with her and reading. And she's got a little sister who's now 3.5, turning 4. And Hazel was only 1.5, about 17 months when Greta first got diagnosed. So she was little. I think that was one of the biggest fears I had when Greta was first diagnosed. It was like, you got these lovely kids, and will they grow up knowing each other? And what kind of loss are they going to experience if they lose her?
Reed was completely different. He loved machines. He loved anything with wings, anything with wheels. And at 5, we took him for his first airplane ride, and that was it. Many years later, he said, I'm going to join the Air Force. And he was quite serious. And he was 16 at the time. And 16 is young. But there was no turning back. This is what he wanted to do. Started to think about training for the testing. And then he started to feel unwell. He started to have a problem with his ankle. Started to swell it. It was intermittent. Some days he could walk on it, some days he couldn't. And it was becoming annoying. And that's when our world changed.
You know, it's like, you know, when you have this guy who's basically a hero in so many ways. So he was excellent at being able to accept and understand and cope with his medical situation, with his prognosis, but yet master the balance of being able to also protect and support his parents and continue to live life.
How do you describe Reed? He was like an old soul. That's how I can describe Reed. He was such an old soul. It was like he was from a different time. Like, he wasn't a normal 19-year-old guy. He was a guy who was like had a future ahead of him. He knew what he wanted in life, and to me that was like just so attractive. Like to be with someone who like knew exactly what they wanted in life and knew how to get his dreams. And he taught me that I could do that too, and that I could fulfill whatever dream I had.
And in fact, that is the hardest thing for young adults, I feel, who know that they're going to pass away from their cancer, even if they don't have to say it, but they know, and still be able to, you know, take each day and live each day to the fullest. I know it sounds cliche, but to actually be able to do that was something that Reed was really good at. And you know, Tina and Bernie, they're so great. I mean, the apples don't fall far from the trees, as we say. So I think the way that they were able to instill that courage in Reed was so obvious from the beginning.
In 2005, my son Reed was diagnosed with Ewing sarcoma, and we knew nothing about it, and still know very little about it, and went through traditional treatment. And in 2007, he passed away from this. And driven by our loss, our friends and family created the Ewing's Cancer Foundation so that we could address the research and awareness for this cancer.
Well, the Ewing's Cancer Foundation of Canada is a group of volunteers who raise money for research into Ewing sarcoma.
We fund research in partnership with C17 Council. So we fund research specific for Ewing sarcoma and advancing knowledge about the disease and advancing treatment, advancing just understanding the disease and what may cause it and stuff. So we've funded 3 research grants now, and there's some promising results coming up.
It's a Ewing sarcoma cell line, so that's good from the point of view of, you know, what we're talking about. So, you know, these look like they're pretty happy. So what you'd be looking for is that they curl up and come off. They're no longer attached. There's a lot of team science that goes on in Canada, which is different than in many other countries, where sort of individual groups get a big grant and then they have to do it all themselves. We're not going to necessarily get that big grant, so we've been forced to do team science, and everyone knows that, you know, teams. Anytime you form a team, you bring in a lot of expertise that you won't have yourself, and everyone knows that's how you win. right, by being a strong team.
We are interested in researchers who want to study Ewing sarcoma. So together with C17, we will financially support these studies.
In Nova Scotia, Canada, over 60,000 zebrafish are doing more than swimming in schools. They're research aquatic vertebrates helping develop Ewing sarcoma treatments at Dr. Jason Berman's zebrafish lab at the Life Sciences Research Institute at Dalhousie University in Halifax.
We're one of the few labs in Canada that's really dedicated to using the zebrafish model to study cancer, and particularly focused on childhood cancer. I think this approach that we have of taking human cancer cells, like Ewing sarcoma cells, putting them in the fish to understand their biology, which genes are important in terms of how they spread, to validate findings of our collaborators. We've got collaborators in the US and in Canada who we've worked with to try to understand what makes these Ewing sarcoma cells spread.
Real keys to understanding how to cure these kids is to understand why it's such a highly migratory or metastatic disease. So Jason, as I said, brings that sort of fish expertise into the community, which is it's very unusual in the field. So we're super grateful to have him as part of our overall team in Canada.
We inject the Ewing sarcoma human cancer cells into the zebrafish embryo. We inject right into the yolk sac here, and we inject human cells that fluoresce red. So once we transplant them into the embryo, we can monitor their movement throughout the embryo, if it's moving and homing to a certain region, or if it's dividing and growing once it's in the embryo.
Why some spread and others don't spread. The fish really provides us like a live animal incubator in order to try to figure this out. And I think it really gives us the opportunity in a fairly rapid and inexpensive way to test new drugs and try to find new ways of treating this disease.
I still am in disbelief that this is my son that has happened to. You know, someone who was so active and so full of life, and such a big strapping boy. And I look at this boy in the bed and I'm thinking, I lost my boy 2.5 years ago. And I don't know who he is. I see pieces of him, but he's got no quality of life. And I wouldn't wish that on anybody. Like, I've got such mixed emotions. Like, one part of me is like, God, please take him and let him have a peaceful death. And the other part of me is saying, don't let him go yet. I'm not ready.
I don't give a fuck. Like, my quality of life is way more important than anything else. Like, that is very important to me. You know, if I'm going to go through something, I need to know that the end result is positive, not a negative, like chemo or radiation. You know, I gotta have this. I don't give a fuck about any of this anymore. But that's not my main priority anymore. It's this, because, like, I'm not going to be able to get this back unless I have my mind to fucking go forward with it, you know? Because I've been through that shit before. Chemo's really hard. Fuck.
Live across these oceans to families gone unseen.
Like, well, right now, just so you guys know, I have more cancer in my lungs probably than the most cancerous lung patient in the fucking hospital right now. This is one of, well, all of this is one of a few problems. So I also have some growing in my bone marrow and my femur, and I have a huge tumor on my back.
But Justin accepted his disease. He never did complain. He used to say, well, you're only here for the day anyway. We're all going to die.
It's incredible how much you can just take for granted in this life. And that's something I tend not to do, is take things for granted. And you know, I got a tattoo on me, only here for the day. You know, that's before cancer. Before I knew I had cancer anyway.
The biggest reason for putting this film together is really to get the knowledge out there about what Ewing sarcoma is, the intricacies of it, how different it could be for every patient, how often it is misdiagnosed and delayed in diagnosis. And so really we want to get this film out there to educate parents, health practitioners, sports teams, coaches, etc., just to take a closer look, because a lot of times if things don't seem right, they probably aren't right. And finding earlier detection for Ewing sarcoma can sometimes make the difference between life and death, as I've witnessed in my own case. So.
The needle biopsy should have been done, and it kind of just didn't get done. And so it prolonged my treatment 4 months later, and then when he did cut me open, it grew. Right, we're talking it grew about 10 centimeters in 3 weeks into a fungating tumor. So it was bleeding every day. Sometimes I couldn't stop it from bleeding. I had to go to emergency visits because it was bleeding so bad. And we had to cauterize it at home. And it was absolutely gross, and it smelled, and it was, it was so funny because I worked throughout the entire period of radiation when I had this fungating tumor on the back of my head. I don't even know how I did that, which was crazy. I'd go to radiation in the morning and then go to work in the afternoon till like 1 in the morning or 10 to 6 or whatever the shift was. Yeah, finished it. Somehow did, I don't know. But yeah, and then once radiation went through, it was actually pieces of my tumor would fall off. I'd be in the shower, and in the bottom of the shower, there was a piece of my black flesh just sitting there, and I'm just like, this is too much to handle. I don't even know what to do with this. But yeah, chunks of it would fall off. It was disgusting. And we're not talking like little things like this. We're talking like chunks like this of your own body falling off. So yeah, it was pretty crazy.
To have your child diagnosed with cancer, it's just so traumatic and horrifying. I don't want other parents to have to face what I did with Ewing sarcoma in my son, and to see their child have to go through all of those horrible treatments.
I started to get short of breath for no real reason. And then one weekend it just got really, really bad. I could barely breathe, I couldn't lay down, and so we went to the Emerge, and the doctor there thought that I had bad pneumonia. So he sent me for a CT scan right away, and then basically I just remember hearing the doctor telling my parents that they found a large mass in my chest, and they were putting me in an ambulance, rushing me to sick kids, and that's how it started.
Sierra, for you, because it's isolated, what sort of treatment do you undergo?
I was diagnosed the same time as Tina's son. So when I was 15, I went through lots of chemo, radiation, surgeries. Now I'm on a trial drug, so it's going good so far. But
It's too young for anyone to have to go
Far
through
too
it,
young.
right?
It was scary, but I think that's when parents who just gotta kind of kick it into high gear and figure out what we're gonna do, take care of our kids.
Morgan, where did you have your Ewing sarcoma?
My left clavicle, so right here.
And that's the only place you have it?
Yes. Yeah, it was in the bone. I had to get it removed.
I think once you get over the initial shock, it's pretty scary. I could say, at least for myself, you always hear about this stuff, cancer and all that, but nobody ever thinks it's going to be them or their family, their kids. So I think once you get over that initial shock, kids are resilient, and I think parents they get strength from their kids. Seeing I know with Morgan, she you know, she really toughed it out, and I think that was, you know, gave her mom and I gave us the strength to get through this and support her as best we could.
This disease is a terrible monster. To think of, in the space of about 8 months, a 6'4" young man, healthy as an ox, worst thing he ever got was a cold. To take a young man like that, and literally in 8 months there was nothing left of him. His arms were this big. It completely consumed him.
Ewing's is evil. It causes excruciating pain because it's a bone cancer. And that's the hardest part. That was the hardest part for me, was seeing my child in agony and unable to, you know, because it was nerve pain and, you know, and everything.
There was nothing that could be done that anybody could do to stop it. I know that the medical community threw everything, the best arsenal that they had at it. But I really feel that they might as well have been throwing stones at it. There's so much more has to be discovered. So much more has to be learned, and we have to raise awareness. It's a monster.
When we were suffering Dara's fourth relapse, I had already been through some research and talking to people, and I knew there was other drugs, potential drugs and precision medicine that was out there. They just weren't available in Canada to her. So we packed up the car last minute and we drove 26 hours to Texas straight through. While I was there, we were making appointments so that we could be seen because she was in dire condition already at this point. Her liver was starting to fail and her kidneys from all of the chemo over 2 years. So as soon as we got to Texas, we were seen right away that morning. And they had prescribed her some target therapy drugs that were already approved in Canada by Health Canada, but just not for Ewing sarcoma. I believe they were approved for kidney disease or kidney cancer. So it was hurtful to know that those drugs were actually approved in Canada, but we had to go to the U.S. to get them at a cost of tens of thousands of dollars. So that is still happening in a lot of cases, and since 2013, since my daughter's passing, there has been a significant improvement in access to some of these precision medicine drugs in Canada. So I see good things on the horizon. It's not happening quickly, but I see good things on the horizon, and some of those same drugs that she was on are now available to kids here in Canada with Ewing sarcoma.
Cancer may have crippled Justin's body, but it did not cripple his spirit. Justin had an inner strength and a spiritual foundation that guided him throughout his life. He approached others with dignity and respect and always remembered to say thank you. He was a kind-hearted and loyal friend. It's through remembering how Justin approached life that we can venture on without him. That's the gift he has given us. No matter what challenges we face or adversities might come our way in the days ahead, we have the choice to decide how to approach it. We can grieve and embrace the journey. We can choose to live. It's what Justin would want us to do.
Two families that shall meet, there goes that letter. Maybe someday it'll float back to me.
Canadian children, Adam Dixon grew up with dreams of becoming an NHL hockey player.
I was 9 years old when I was first diagnosed. I was experiencing some pain in my leg during swimming lessons, and then I couldn't sleep that night, and we went through the process of going to the hospital and kind of finding out that I had cancer.
We were very lucky in the diagnosis part. I mean, every mother knows their child. They know when something's not right, and Adam had been complaining about his leg hurting, and he also, the next day when I looked at it, there was actually a small lump in his leg, and it concerned me. And he, when we went up to emergency to have it looked at, the emergency doctor actually was, took me for face value. He didn't think I was being overreactive in that, and decided to send him for x-rays the next day.
This cancer led to the removal of his right tibia, which was replaced with a donor bone, a metal plate, and multiple screws.
I remember in grade 9, your unit in science, one of them deals with cancer, and that's when I really realized exactly what I was in for and what I was up against. I didn't know. I was kind of ignorant. I don't know if that was a bad thing, but grade 9, I really found out how dire my situation really was at the time.
Determined to continue playing hockey, when Adam was 11 years old, he was introduced to sledge hockey that was designed to allow participants who had a physical disability to play the game of ice hockey.
This opportunity never would have been there for me without being diagnosed with cancer. But in the 2006-07 season, when I was 17 years old, turning 18, I made the Canadian national sledge hockey team. So I've been very lucky to be able to play that and represent my country in 2 Olympics now, and travel the world and see the sights all with some sports.
He has continued to be a leading goal scorer, and in 2017, he and the rest of Team Canada became world champions.
If we could make a difference in Canada for the families that are suffering and the families that will suffer, unfortunately, into the future, it will make all the difference. We've been 10 years in existence, and if we can change the direction of the treatments for Ewing sarcoma and the futures for these kids, then it was all worth it.
You got all these words to say, but somehow they won't come out. Won't come out, won't come out. To listen to what they say, your decision, you're here to stay. Freaking out, freaking out. So live your life today, tomorrow might not come. Live your life today, tomorrow might not come. Stop the page, stop the page. Expectations are building high, they just don't understand what you're going through. You sit to the table to write, stand back 'cause that empty white